In June 2020, 1.9 billion euros vanished from the accounts of Germany's most prestigious financial technology firm. Wirecard occupied a central position in the DAX index, Germany's blue-chip stock market. It was overseen by top-tier auditors and national regulators, holding the status of a trusted financial powerhouse. The discovery that a quarter of the company's balance sheet did not exist exposed a failure of oversight that had persisted for over a decade. As the digital economy surged, Germany's industrial leadership faced a growing vulnerability. The country lacked a global technology titan to compete with Silicon Valley. Markus Braun stepped into this national void. He presented himself as the visionary executive who could deliver a German tech miracle. Wirecard's rapid growth began in the fringes of the internet. In its early years, the firm generated revenue by processing high-risk payments for online gambling and pornography websites. Braun methodically scrubbed this history. He adopted the aesthetic of a visionary innovator to gain entry into Europe's elite financial circles. The rebranding led to massive financial success. Wirecard displaced traditional banks to join the DAX index, eventually reaching a market valuation of 24 billion euros. By aligning the company with national tech ambition, Braun encouraged investors and analysts to overlook the inconsistencies in his business model. While the Munich headquarters projected an image of transparency, the company's overseas operations remained almost entirely opaque. Chief Operating Officer Jan Marszalek managed the mechanics of this hidden network, while Braun focused on the firm's public narrative. Wirecard's Asian operations were structurally isolated. Located in foreign jurisdictions, they were shielded from standard European regulatory oversight. To explain its high volume, Wirecard relied on third-party acquirers, local partners processing transactions in regions where the firm lacked banking licenses. These obscure partners were remarkably productive, generating half of Wirecard's global revenue and nearly all of its corporate profit. This complex international architecture was vital to the scheme. The labyrinth ensured that no single auditor could trace the actual movement of cash. The fraud was maintained through a constant shuffling of forged contracts, backdated documents, and falsified escrow certificates across international borders. Marszalek's network utilized a mechanic known as round-tripping. The same sum of money was moved through a series of subsidiaries to simulate massive transaction volume. Wirecard justified the lack of physical cash in Germany by claiming that billions of euros were sitting safely in offshore trust accounts in the Philippines. Auditors in Munich often relied on printouts and unverified digital screenshots provided by Marszalek's team, rather than obtaining direct access to the bank accounts. The shadow ledger allowed the firm to record billions in imaginary Asian transactions, which then directly increased the company's valuation on the European stock market. Early warnings came from activist short sellers. They published reports demonstrating that Wirecard's reported profit margins in Asia were mathematically impossible. Whistleblowers began to emerge from within the company. In Singapore, legal counsel Pav Gill uncovered forged documents and internal discrepancies that pointed to systemic fraud. German regulators at BaFin responded to these reports by launching criminal investigations into the journalists and critics who had raised the alarms. BaFin eventually implemented a 2-month ban on short-selling Wirecard stock, an intervention that protected the company's share price from further scrutiny. Markus Braun confidently dismissed the allegations. He insisted the evidence of fraud was actually a coordinated criminal conspiracy organized by his enemies. The desire to protect a national champion allowed the fraud to continue, as the financial ecosystem prioritized Wirecard's success over its own duty of oversight. As whispers and leaked documents reached a critical mass, the protection offered by regulators was no longer enough to hide the discrepancies. The Financial Times published the House of Wirecard investigation, presenting concrete evidence of round-tripping and forgery. The investigative reporting stripped away the company's protective aura and forced international authorities to take action. Singaporean police raided Wirecard's Asian offices, escalating the situation into a high-stakes criminal investigation. Braun maintained his defense, denying the police findings and daring the market to doubt the company's financial results one last time. The illusion was failing. The ultimate test began as auditors prepared to verify if the billions of euros in the Philippine trust accounts were real or if they had never existed at all. For 2 decades, Wirecard stood as the crown jewel of European financial technology. By 2018, it carried a €24 billion valuation and a place on Germany's prestigious DAX index. But the mechanical reality operating beneath that success was already splintering. CEO Markus Braun maintained a posture of absolute certainty. He presented the company as a flawless digital payment pioneer, repeatedly dismissing mounting outside scrutiny from short sellers and analysts as illegal market manipulation. That assurance faltered in February 2019. Responding to internal fraud allegations, Singaporean police raided Wirecard's local headquarters, seizing hard drives and financial records from the company's Asia-Pacific division. Pressure from terrified investors forced the executive board to act. They retained KPMG to conduct a special independent forensic audit, promising the market this would clear the company's name once and for all. Subjecting their internal books to outside forensic accountants stripped Wirecard's executives of their ability to control the flow of information. The company's ledgers were now open to individuals they could not direct or dismiss. The external audit was preceded by an internal leak. Employees within the Asia-Pacific division gathered backdated contracts and internal emails, passing the documents directly to investigative journalists at the Financial Times. Those documents mapped a highly specific mechanical deception. Wirecard claimed it relied on local, third-party companies to process transactions in markets where it lacked its own banking licenses. These processors supposedly handled the payments and held the resulting cash in trust accounts. Instead of authentic consumer purchases, the same blocks of money were cycled back and forth between Wirecard subsidiaries and these external businesses. Each loop registered as brand new transaction volume on the balance sheet. This closed-loop system dominated the company's financials. By 2018, just 3 of these unverified partner companies accounted for half of Wirecard's worldwide revenue and almost all of its reported profit. The mathematics of the operation had stretched to a breaking point. The volume of fictitious profit required to sustain the company's stock price far exceeded the actual cash entering their accounts. Ernst & Young had audited Wirecard for over a decade. Facing intense public scrutiny and the findings of the special KPMG report, the firm finally required direct, verifiable proof of the cash balances supposedly held by the Asian trustees. Wirecard executives produced official correspondence. They presented physical bank statements, purportedly from the Bank of the Philippine Islands and BDO Unibank, confirming that nearly €2 billion were safely deposited in Manila. The auditors contacted the Asian banks directly. The Philippine Central Bank quickly issued a statement. The letters were complete fabrications. Wirecard was not even a registered client at either institution. Ernst & Young immediately suspended their approval. On June 18, 2020, they formally refused to sign off on Wirecard's 2019 financial statements, stating that €1.9 billion could not be located. That missing figure represented roughly 1/4 of Wirecard's entire declared balance sheet. A pillar of the European tech industry was completely hollow. The announcement hit the Frankfurt Stock Exchange instantly. Investors initiated a massive sell-off, dropping the share price by 75% in hours. A few days later, management issued a final, fatal concession. The executive board released a public statement concluding that there was a prevailing likelihood the missing bank trust balances had never actually existed. Without those fictional reserves, the company could not service its debt. Creditor banks refused to extend further financial lifelines, forcing Wirecard to formally file for insolvency on June 25th. In less than a week, a corporation once valued higher than Germany's largest traditional banks evaporated. €3 billion in bank loans and countless individual investments were reduced to zero. The financial collapse quickly transitioned into a sprawling criminal investigation, bringing prosecutors and state courts into the center of the fallout. Markus Braun resigned and was arrested shortly after the insolvency filing. Standing trial in Munich, he faced multiple charges of fraud, embezzlement, and market manipulation. Taking the stand, Braun maintained a firm line of defense. He testified that he had absolutely no knowledge of falsified accounts or misappropriated funds, placing the blame entirely on his subordinates. Chief among those subordinates was Chief Operating Officer Jan Marsalek. Fired the day the fraud was exposed, Marsalek boarded a private plane, vanished from the authorities, and surfaced in Belarus. The 2 men who built the Wirecard empire met highly divergent ends.
The CEO sat in a Bavarian courtroom fighting to preserve his liberty, while his second-in-command secured a place on Interpol's red notice list. The legal consequences extended far beyond the Munich boardroom. In Singapore, lower-level finance managers and third-party executives were prosecuted and sentenced to years in prison for falsifying the early documents. Within Germany, the crisis exposed severe regulatory negligence. BaFin, the Federal Financial Supervisory Authority, had spent years investigating journalists and analysts who criticized Wirecard, rather than aggressively examining the company's books. This misplaced focus cost the agency its leadership. The president of BaFin publicly admitted the agency's handling of the situation was a complete disaster, leading to his forced resignation and a total overhaul of German accounting oversight. The theft of billions was orchestrated by a few executives, but enabled by analysts, auditors, and regulators who accepted forged numbers at face value. An entire system designed to protect the public chose to believe the mathematics of endless growth. When institutions prioritize hype over strict verification, the mechanisms of trust fail, and the market pays the price.